Hello, I'm Franz Spohn, and today we're going to create creatures. Now, when I think about creatures, I think of some kind of an animal or some kind of being that has scales and fur and is a lot different than us. Maybe they don't have arms, they have wings, but they also have feet. So we're going to just go ahead and let our imagination run wild, and we are going to create creatures. So I'm going to be using a scratch drawing technique. I'll be using beeswax crayons and tempera paint and a piece of watercolor paper to start. The first thing that I want to do is lay down a surface of nice bright colors. And so I use the beeswax crayons because they're very smooth and they will lay down a nice, rich, thick coating over the paper. And the idea is to seal the paper so that when I put the black tempera paint on top of it, the paint will not stick to the paper itself. So get a couple colors down there and you can fill the whole page. I like doing these little kind of spots of color rather than just one color because it's kind of like opening a present. Once I put the black paint down, I start to scratch. It's like getting, oh wow, I got red. I wasn't expecting red. Now the other thing, once I get the beeswax crayon down, I'll take a cloth and I'll kind of buff it down. And that makes it really smooth. It kind of seals up any part of the paper that you haven't totally covered with a crayon. And it makes it kind of shiny. And so rather than spend, a good amount of time finishing, I already have one ready to go. Now the next step is to use a wider brush with black tempera paint. And I have a little cup here so it kind of keeps things nice and tidy. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just make some kind of a shape on top of the beeswax crayon. And I'm going to cover that up. And while it's still wet, I'm going to draw something. So let's say that we'll start off with maybe a circle. And let's put some eyes on it. But instead of 2 eyes, let's put a bunch of eyes. Because again, creatures are going to be a little bit different than us. So I'm using a little bit of pressure on the end of the brush and using it as a drawing tool. And it's a happy creature though, so we're going to draw a big smile. And then let's start giving it a little arm coming out there. So you just make this up. And what's nice about this technique of using this wet paint instead of letting it dry, which is kind of a traditional way of doing it, if I do something I don't like, I just take a little bit more paint and I go over it and I can redraw that. So it takes all the pressure off of having to be perfect. Let's give him, this is almost looking like kind of a odd-looking Humpty Dumpty because he's got lots and lots of these kind of claw-like things. So after I get that done, I'll let that dry, and then I can go back later to get some detail in there. But I like using the end of the brush because it gives you a wider, more expressive line. Now I'm going to put another shape. And I leave a little bit of space in between because I like seeing that bright color. And now that's a triangle, so let's make this into some kind of a pizza creature. All right, so I would continue doing that until I have the whole page covered with these kind of patchwork type arrangements, and we'll put that away for now. And so now I've got a piece that's almost finished, and what I have left to do is this bigger creature here. Now, you can either use regular scratch tools, which you can get a thick line, thin line, or you can take a dowel rod and you can just sharpen the end of it, and then that way you can use this because it's, it'll be handy to have. And now I'm going to start maybe putting some hair. And there's a nice contrast between this nice, thin, precise line and the kind of the juicier, more expressionistic, thick lines. And if I want to, I can make those teeth really show up, so I can kind of scratch some of that away. Maybe I want the eyeball not to be totally black. All right, and let's make the horn a little brighter here. So you can start working the surface and decide how hairy, or let's say down here on the belly, we could do scales. It's up to you. I mean, this is a creature. There are no rules about creatures. They can have 2 heads. They can have 10 eyes. Let's I like the hair. Let's keep on putting hair. So you can kind of see that you spend as much time as you want developing the detail. And it's like, as I'm going around, it's like if I come out of the tail here, there's this green, and all of a sudden, wow, look at that, it turns to red. It reminds a little bit about the way that candy blends together. If you get something like a gummy worm or something, it goes from one color to the other, and you get those really nice, bright colors coming through. So here's green again, but if I come down here, I've got yellow. So I can keep on working. I'll show you a little bit about how detailed you can get with the finer tool, but it's up to you. You can find anything. You could take a nail. You could use anything that's going to scratch through, and the idea is to build up the detail that you need to make your creature fearsome or goofy or however you feel about your creature. So your imagination and your materials, and you can have a lot of fun. Now with the sharper tool, if I put a little extra pressure, I'm actually scratching through the wax itself. So if I want to get kind of a really brighter highlight, you get a little more of the, you get the paint off, but you get a little bit of the crayon off too. So it's up to you to decide how much detail, how bright you want it to be, how much of the color you want to resolve. So I have taken a nice journey into creature land, and I hope that you have fun creating your own.